Boys and girls, welcome back. Welcome back to the AFL Villains lovely Friday. And we have the 5 strangest stadiums in AFL history. But before we even get to the video, the season has basically already started. We've seen like the preseason games going on. The preseason games or like the match simulations. I watched the Brisbane highlights against Gold Coast. We lost. Don't really care. It's preseason. Games don't really count. It's more about like getting like your fitness and stuff like that. But pretty excited. Very excited. See Sam Laylor got hurt with like a fractured jaw. I actually saw it. It was wasn't the greatest, but he got hurt. So fast and hopeful recovery for him. Hopefully he gets back right. And you know, we're about what, 2 weeks away from the start of AFL season. I cannot wait. Obviously, guys, know the streams are going to be back this season. The last year it was kind of a bit on and off. I've told you guys, waking up at 1, 2, 3 in the morning is hard. It's hard. Very hard, but very excited. Hopefully we get a lot of Brisbane games for you guys this year as well, man. Looking forward to that. Obviously, the defending premiership winners. Looking forward to that. And that should be a good one. Should be an absolute great one. But now, we're here to check out the 5 strangest stadiums in AFL history. Shout out to Pivot Piece. All credit goes to him big time. And without further ado, I'm just keeping rubbing my hands because I just feel like rubbing my hands. Let's just start the video. Don't forget to start the video and sub as well. As always, you guys support and love means a lot, man. So excited for this AFL season. Let's get it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we are going to be looking at the 5 strangest stadiums that have hosted a home and away VFL/AFL game for premiership points. Now, it could be the location, it could be the configuration of the stadium itself, or it could just be a weird one-off game at a strange ground. Now, before we get into this, if you have been enjoying my videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. It does help me to keep making the videos. I really appreciate all the support you guys have given me so far.
AFL stadiums are nice though. Them things are big as hell.
Order,
some
the
big
first stadium
stadiums
on the list, it is going to be Jiangwan Stadium in Shanghai, China. Port Adelaide did play 3 games in this stadium between 2017 and 2019. And it was a diplomatic strategy to bring China and Australia together through sport to develop business and political investment and opportunities between the two nations.
That's what's up.
These
That's
games
nice.
were televised in China. Port and the AFL did receive some sponsorship dollars from Chinese organizations because of these games. And in terms of the crowds, they did get around 10,000 on average to each game. The crowd was majority Australian expats and tourists. There were a lot of free tickets given out to locals, but I'm not sure how many locals actually cared or paid money to attend these games. I do think there was minimal support from the local community, which really should come as no surprise to anyone. There have been a lot of sports that have struggled to crack the Chinese market, and realistically, Australian rules football would be a long way down the list for the Chinese public. Now, the arrangement was meant to continue after the 2019 game, but the 2020 event was cancelled due to the pandemic. And we know the issues that were coming out of China in the year 2020. And the AFL has not gone back to China since. There was some talk at the start of 2024 about potentially going back in the future. I think there was some interest from David Koch and Port Adelaide, but personally I doubt that happens. The stadium itself was built in 1934 and it was mainly used as an athletics stadium. You do see
it looks like the Olympics type of stadium
in the Art Deco style. The playing surface itself was very big because they did originally have a running track around it.
Yeah,
for the AFL games, they did install temporary seating behind each end. It did look very strange, a very weird stadium, you got to say. And in fact, the whole China situation was very weird. Looking back on it, it almost feels like a fever dream. And it's easy to forget that this did actually happen. The next stadium on the list is the weird stadium in the A.
That's just a weird combination because I know you mentioned about them potentially going back. There's no point really going back. There's not really no interest from the the Chinese side of it, like the locals of it. Like I couldn't tell you how many Chinese AFL fans there are. I don't think there's any really. So I don't really see them going back. But I will say though, America's probably would be the best bet. Obviously, I think we seen a video about the AFL and the USA stuff like that. I would because there are some AFL fans in the US, aka me, but I think their next big tourist thing would be to come to the States, especially now with no football season. They could probably use some the football arenas and make it an AFL space. I don't know how they would really do that, but I would that's just my point of view. I think they should come to the States. Just the sponsorships, the views, the
ACT, formerly
eyes.
known as Bruce Stadium. Now, we do know this today as a rectangular rugby and rugby league ground, home of the Canberra Raiders and the
Canberra
Brumbies in
Raiders.
the Super Rugby. But in the 90s, it was actually in an oval configuration. And it did host one AFL game in the 1995 season between Fitzroy and the West Coast Eagles. Now, I couldn't find any photos of the game, but I did find this old video of a rugby league game, and you can see the old configuration of the ground, the big area behind the goals.
Yeah,
and the
it does
oval
give off
shape.
AFL
The stadium
vibes.
did get a renovation not long after that 1995 AFL game, where it did get turned into a rectangular stadium before the 2000 Sydney Olympics, where it did host some of the soccer games for that event. And we know the AFL games now in Canberra are played at Manuka Oval. I do like the stadium. It was a good move to get out of that multi-purpose arena. And hopefully one day we do see a Canberra team in the AFL. The next stadium is the Melbourne Motordrome, a former speedway located in what is now Olympic Park in Melbourne. It did open all the way back in 1924, and it did contain a grass oval on the inside of the racetrack. And they hosted car and motorbike races on the racetrack, and they did play some local football and cricket on the oval on the inside of the track.
Wow.
And the VFL was at
Why does that look so small? It looks so small compared to like Paz fields, like Canberra and like the Chinese field. It looks so small. Ain't no way in hell there's playing AFL games on here. I mean, obviously they were because we have photos like we see presented to us, but it looks very petite, very small. But I would assume a smaller field, could be better games, I guess. But I don't know.
actually keen to
Tad bit
purchase the
weird to me.
ground and take ownership of it. They
Like
did
the whole-
schedule
like the whole
several games
racetrack.
to be played there in the 1931 season, but the games were moved because of a dispute between the VFL and the owners at the time of the Motordrome. And the Melbourne Football Club ultimately played 3 games at the Motordrome early in the 1932 season because the MCG was being resurfaced at the time. And there was actually plans to play 1 game every week there until 1940. However, no more games were played there due to a dispute with the local councils where the VFL club's home grounds were located. And those local
Dang.
councils were worried that they would lose revenue if they lost those VFL games, and they actually threatened to kick the clubs out of their home grounds if they
That's
did
some
go
that's
ahead
some
with
that's
their
some
plans
haters
to
that's some
play
hater
at the
crap.
Motordrome.
That's
Funnily
real
enough, the
haterish.
stadium did actually have electric floodlights. And it did
Ooh.
host a night exhibition game in the 1935 pre-season between Richmond and South Melbourne. And that would have to be one of the earliest night games ever played, you would think.
Night
Ultimately,
games,
the stadium
better
was
than day
demolished
games.
and they built the Olympic Park Stadium for the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. And we remember that stadium as being the home ground of the Storm in the NRL before Amy Park was built. The 4th stadium on the list is Yallourn Oval. And Yallourn was a company town in Victoria around 140 kilometres east of Melbourne near the town of Moe. The town was actually built between 1921 and 1961 for employees of the State Electricity Commission of Victoria to live in while they worked on the Yallourn Power Station, which was a nearby coal-fired power station. And the population of the town was only around 5,000 at its peak. The town oval hosted 1 VFL game in the 1952 season between Footscray and St Kilda. And the reason for that is in round 8 of 1952, the VFL held National Day Round, where they did play games in various grounds around the country that did not normally host VFL football. And the idea was they would promote the sport and the league itself to different markets. Now, the other games were played in Brisbane, Sydney, Hobart, Albury and Euroa. And it's strange that the VFL chose such an obscure town and obscure ground to host a game at, being Yallourn. The attendance for the game was only about 3,500, and unfortunately we don't really have any images of.
I mean, it was like a small city though, they said, right? I did manage
to find some old photos of the ground. And the reason this is such an obscure stadium is the oval and the actual whole town of Yallourn were demolished because they did expand the coal mine that the town was built around, and the demolition of the town and the oval was complete by the year 1983. And no one really knows why they picked the towns that they did pick for this event. I did do some digging through the history books, and it seems the question was being asked even back in 1952. And the last stadium on the list, it is Sky Stadium in Wellington, New Zealand, formerly known as Westpac Stadium. And this stadium did host 3 St Kilda games between 2013 and 2015. And they
That's
played
kind of
those
recent,
games
like
on
10 years
Anzac
ago.
Day due to the shared history and significance of Anzac Day between Australia and New Zealand. Of course, New Zealand being one of the 3 countries which has hosted an AFL game for points.
Hold on. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to sound stupid when I say this. I hope I'm not stupid when I say this. But why doesn't Anzac Day games be hosting like New Zealand? Like 1 year it's in Australia, next year it's in New Zealand. You know, like it just goes back and forth for every year. I think that'd be pretty cool. Like you said, obviously like New Zealand's like impacting that. That's just me. They've already hosted AFL games before, so why not just go back and forth between the two? And like Anzac Day, like between like the Bombers, just the Anzac Day game in general is probably one of like the biggest games in AFL history. Yeah, I did have like a brain fart. I forgot the 2 teams that are like involved in it. Mean brain fart and clown me. I just forgot just now. I'm probably going to remember after the video, but now I can't think of it. But anyway, like Essendon and Collingwood, something like that. But anyway, I think it should go back and forth. 1 year in New Zealand, 1 day in Aussie.
China that we did talk about earlier in the video. Now the ground holds around 34,000 people.
I forgot. I can't think of the Anzac Day team.
The advantage of this ground for AFL is that it is in an oval configuration, so it definitely works for Aussie rules. It has held various low-level Aussie rules games over the years. I think the under-18s play a representative game over there, or at least they have in the past, as well as the New Zealand national team. In terms of AFL games, the crowds were actually pretty decent in the first game in the year 2013 between Sydney and St Kilda. They got around 22,000 that night, but in the next 2 years,
I was
the
wrong.
crowds really did fall away significantly, and ultimately St Kilda exited the New Zealand agreement after 2015, having lost all 3 of the games that were played in Wellington. So sort of a fun little video to look back on some of these strange grounds, guys. But that is...
I think every stadium I feel like have like their own like purpose. Like the Chinese was for like the Chinese stadium they had. I also see the one with like the Y, small town. You know, it's good for the community. Go out there, support. You know, obviously this one just see the New Zealand stadium. I'm still for it. Listen. Was it strange? Yes. But was it interesting? Always. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry for my brain fart early on about Anzac Day. I'm going to edit that. Probably edit it out. Hope you like the video, sub as well. See you guys soon. AFL season slowly around the corner. Peace.